So today's topic is unlocking the insights via organic acid urine testing. And you're going to learn more about organic acid urine testing, hopefully than ever before. So we're going to talk about specifically through a case study lens, exactly how organic acid testing could help your patients, whether they have ADD or other conditions in your functional medicine or naturopathic medicine practice or health coaching, whatever stool testing you may already be doing. You may already be using GI map from DSL, from Diagnostic Solutions Laboratory. So a little bit about me before we go into the test more. So as mentioned, I'm a naturopathic doctor and been using metabolomics testing and studying it for at least 8 years and probably going back at least 14 years. And in my private practice, focused mostly on functional endocrinology, naturopathic medicine, mold illness, environmental illnesses, and whatnot. So this test for me through mentorship has been very helpful and insightful, and actually was kind of like the gateway test into mold. So that's for another presentation, but essentially been in and around medicine my whole life. And for especially the last 20 years before herbal medicine was emergency medicine. So our agenda today, so what will we discuss with everybody here? We're going to be going over a lot of the different foundations of urine organic acid testing. And you're going to learn quite a bit about, hold on, everyone. I just need to adjust this a second. So presents. Okay. All right. Okay. So we're going to talk specifically about organic acid testing in light of ADD as mentioned, and there's specific parts of the test. The test is over 70 analytes. So you'll be able to ascertain how to utilize the test, specifically going through things like the Krebs cycle, fatty acid oxidation, in the results with your patients. Specifically, we're going to really highlight dopamine and the EA-VMA ratio. And we'll talk about dopamine beta hydroxylase there and the tryptophan pathway with 5-HIAA. So without further ado, we'll start breaking things down, and you will have the slides. So I'm not going to read off every single slide, but this is going to really help you, hopefully with the GI map, break things down into more detail and whatever other blood tests you're doing for your patients. So the DSL organic acid profile test, you may use other organic acid testing for other lab test companies. This test was updated. The lab has had it for about 4 years, but it's been updated and upgraded to the current state of the test in about 2 months ago, actually, September. So you can go to the website. Essentially, you'll just go to diagnosticsolutionsLab.com, and then you're going to scroll down through the tests menu and click on the organic acid profile. And then there's all these resources here you can download as well. Sample report, organic acid interpretive guide, which we'll talk about briefly, and then a product brief. So this is the exact URL that you can order from. Of course, Rupa Health is a great place to order it too. And you could order the GI map and DSL stool test directly through Rupa Health and have it shipped to your patient. So it's always nice and convenient. Just showing you where to get the resources specifically on the website. I would definitely get the organic acid interpretive guide, and it has some great diagrams, which we'll share with you today in a couple slides. Also, in general, when we're talking about organic acid urine testing, we're talking about, nutritional biochemistry. The topic is systems biology. So essentially, metabolomics, also called precision medicine. So you're able to really drill down into more minutia, more detail, and you're going to be able to see more of what's going on at the mitochondrial level, the cellular level, the toxin level, all those things. And before we even get there, we should probably define what organic acids are. So from a biochemistry level, if you've taken a lot of biochemistry, this is probably a review. I do a lot of continuing ed and everything, and I like it when they review the basics before getting into the details. So that's what this slide is. Essentially, organic acids are small molecules produced as metabolic intermediates and endpoints when the body breaks down proteins, fats, and carbohydrates during cellular respiration or metabolism. So they have different components, and as mentioned, the test does have over 70 analytes. So you'll be able to jump into more of what your patient needs and is missing in their nutrition and micronutrients. as well as macronutrients, toxins, gut health, etc. So essentially, when we're drilling down into precision medicine, this whole target here is high accuracy, high precision. So you can have low accuracy, low precision. Obviously, that's going to be a horrible result. That's kind of like a shotgun approach, giving your patients all the supplements and medications under the sun. And then low accuracy, high precision, you're going to be outside the bullseye by far. And then high accuracy, low precision, still might not be hitting the mark. Maybe you're moving closer with less conventional approaches and mixed in maybe with some conventional. And then higher precision, higher accuracy. With this type of testing, you're going to really get there all the way from the methodology level down. So really, why does it matter? You're going to be seeing what's going on in your patient's cellular level. So gut level and cell level are going to be crucial for whole body health, right? So this is a great article. You can download it. You can find the PMID number right off of PubMed. And it's talking about how metabolomics is this discipline of a specific phenotype, which when you combine epigenetics and genetics, nutrigenomics, all these things, you're going to be able to really help your patients with their chronic health problems around not just nutrition, but environmental exposures. Maybe the medications they're taking are causing nutrient deficiencies that you may not be aware of. So this test can really help you figure out those other things that maybe either aren't obvious. Most of us know that with a statin medication, you need to take CoQ10, but there could be other things that are severely deficient, especially if someone was on a medication for 10 years and you're helping them come off of that. They could still have problems like with PPIs. So urine organic acids are extremely helpful. And, there's been quite a bit of use in the functional medicine, integrated medicine space for about 30 years. So this is not a new test if you're hearing about it today for the first time or in the last 5 years. It has been around for quite some time. So more about precision medicine and metabolomics. And we also have the omics tests, which combines urine organic acids and blood amino acids, which is a great test as well. And that is also under this precision medicine category. Here, you're going to be able to really see what's going on and how your patient's lifestyle, how their current supplements or lack of supplementation and food and nutrition and gut health are playing into all these things. And it is a first morning urine test, so it is quite simple to collect. And what I've seen is that when somebody's on a specific diet, you'll be able to understand how that diet is working for them or not working for them. For example, a keto diet or a carnivore diet, a vegan diet, etc. Maybe you're doing like an autoimmune paleo diet, things like that. And you could really fill in the gaps there. Sometimes people are on a keto diet and they need more L-carnitine to pull in the fatty acids and deeper into the cell, into the mitochondria, so that they can actually make ATP from those fatty acids. Whereas they may feel very fatigued until you give them the L-carnitine via injection, IV, or via supplements. So that's just one example. Today, we're going to be talking a lot about cognitive health and cognitive function, obviously with ADD. So here are some key nutrients that some of them in general are good for obviously all of us, but especially for people who have ADD or ADHD. The case study is more focused on ADHD. So just keep that in mind when you're hearing about this on this webinar. There's a lot of different conditions that this test can help, even though we're going to be focused more on that case study. So before we get there, we need to kind of give you a visual of what we're looking at here in the pathway. So the normal metabolic pathway is your enzymes are hopefully moving forward through the Krebs cycle and all the way through the electron transport chain and all that good stuff. And then you're making a lot of ATP. You're feeling energetic. You don't have brain fog, or your patient doesn't have brain fog, and sufficient cofactors and nutrient cofactors to get there. And then you're not having, toxins inhibit these enzymes either, hopefully. So this is a perfect normal situation. Our patients are not typically in that situation. So what they're dealing with is more what's happening down here. So they'll have an enzymatic step that is either blocked because of a nutrient cofactor deficiency and or toxins. There could be some dysbiosis also playing into this as well, depending on the exact enzyme and analyte. So then you'll have a reduced function. The urine organic acids will show up out of balance in the test, and you'll be able to figure out how to help them. So that's essentially what we're talking about with this urine test. And then there's specific reasons why you would probably want to test this beyond nutrient deficiencies. Most of my patients over the years would fall into chronic fatigue syndrome or fatigue. Maybe they have brain fog with that. Maybe they've already been diagnosed with ADD, or they never were. And then, in their 50s or 40s, they're diagnosed with ADD and attentive type, and they're having problems focusing, communicating. It's affecting their work life. So really, we may get into the biochemistry and the weeds of it all, but essentially are helping them outperform maybe even their coworkers or other people. So keep in mind that the impact is broad. Essentially, there's been kind of this game of telephone in the industry at large around lab testing and misconceptions, specifically about organic acid urine testing. So one of the myths, when we kind of lay them out here, these are things I've heard throughout at least the last 8+ years, 8 to 14 years, is that organic acid urine testing is only valuable for pediatric inborn errors of metabolism. So there's a lot of research that when you pull up about organic acids in PubMed, you'll be reading about pediatric inborn errors and genetic diseases, so like PKU. So that's not the case. And it actually is obviously helpful for adults and children, in my opinion, and in our opinion at DSL, of course. So myth 2 is that it's too complex and specific to be used for general diagnostics. Well, essentially, if you are in the functional medicine world, which I assume everybody is who's attending today, is that you're going to be wanting to get a more broad diagnostic net potentially in the beginning, right? So you're going to want to be able to figure out what's going on at the gut level, the cellular level, the gut-brain axis, the hormonal level, right? So having a test like this is going to be able to give you that information. You could, stick with blood testing for a while and then add this to every case. I've had a lot of patients where they don't even, mention any issues with gut health, and I do urine organic acid testing. You can see that how severe their gut is, and then say, okay, now let's do the GI map. So things like that can be very helpful. It is obviously for kids and adults, as mentioned. The results are pretty specific, and we'll talk about the methodology around that. About individual variability is really can be influenced by diet and age, but it is really helpful for you to kind of guide your patient through how they want to prep for it. And we'll talk a little bit about that too. So first morning urine tests, no avoiding the bladder for 6 to 8 hours before 9 a.m. So overall, there's been some falsehoods and misconceptions. And overall, I do think that, hopefully we're past that now and we can move forward, and hopefully you all feel comfortable using the test. And this test was updated, as mentioned, in September, so 2 months ago. And the lab has had it for 4 to 5 years, roughly. And we all, a lot of different organic acid tests have similar markers potentially. Unique to the organic acid profile here at DSL is that we have glucose in the urine test, D-lactic acid, cortisol, and microalbumin, fructose, quercetin, aldosterone, and equal. And equal is a marker for basically a derivative of soy products that is anti-inflammatory and healthy. And then a summary of the functional imbalances is on the front page with targeted explanations and findings. And then there's nutraceutical insights and actionable results on the final pages. So essentially, you could take those beginning and end pages, and that's your dashboard of what's borderline high-low, actually high-low in the red and yellow. And then you're able to say, okay, these are the nutrients that are needed. And then we have consultations where you can schedule with myself or anyone on the team and staff here, and they'll be able to help you unpack the details and minutia and help you learn the test better. So we recommend order the test for yourself, test yourself first, or family member or loved one, and then review the test with us. And that way you feel comfortable with it before using it on patients. Specifically new to the upgrade is, and this was a lot of teamwork with the team at DSL, is glyceric acid, glycolic acid, and then different fungal markers that you may or may not be familiar with, citramalic acid, tricarbolic acid. And then there's specific ratios that were very helpful. We're going to talk about some of these, but there's HVA and VMA ratio, and that has to do with dopamine beta hydroxylase enzyme deficiency or insufficiency. And then the chyarinic and guanic acid and cortisone. So again, it is urine only, first morning urine, pretty easy to do. You don't have to schedule a blood draw. You don't have to deal with mobile phlebotomists not showing up or all that kind of stuff that I've dealt with in Seattle over the years, where it's challenging to get people a blood draw when they're very busy. You may have patients that travel. You may yourself be remote, and they also may never have time for that, or a lot of patients have problems with blood draws and they faint and things like that. So urine test is pretty easy. And outside of the 95th percent limit, so this is how to interpret the test. You're going to have results show up. They're in quintiles, so up to 20%, 40%, 60, etc. So these ranges are based on healthy cohort population. And if it's 95% or higher, then it's truly high. So it'll be marked red on the top of the report on that dashboard, on your functional dashboard. And if it's outside the 80% limit, so above the 80%, it'll be in the orange or yellow. Kind of similar to a lot of tests. It's like traffic lights, right? So green, yellow, orange, borderline priority, summarized on the front page, utilized in the back page calculators. So we basically have an algorithm where it tells you what you're going to need to prescribe or not prescribe, or dietary things or other testing that you would want to consider. Of course, know your patient, interview patients, figure out what is needed for them as well from the test. I mean, they may already be taking some of these nutrients, but maybe they're not taking active forms, right? So who can benefit from organic acid urine testing? I already mentioned chronic fatigue syndrome. I mean, that is for me and probably most of people I know in this community in North America of functional medicine, integrative natural medicine, is chronic fatigue syndrome. Obviously, chronic GI problems would be very high up there. And for many of you, that may be the number one thing coming through your practice or your business. And neurological disorders, so autism spectrum, ADHD, ADD, memory deficits. So mild cognitive impairments, you could reverse. And you could do something like this combined with other therapies to really help you pin down what is needed. And you would be able to really help someone's brain, in my opinion. So mood disorders, I mean, a lot of people are very anxious today. I think the 90s was the depression era, with the medications coming out in that time. And now it seems like more people have more anxiety than depression, maybe. Hopefully this is able to help your patients get their nervous system tuned up. So there could be nutritional imbalances, detox challenges, increased toxin exposures, etc. Fibromyalgia is not a diagnosis. It is basically like a syndrome. It's like saying IBS. So you want to figure out what's causing the myalgia, the fibromyalgia, and get down to it. And usually that has to do with not heavy metals, aluminum in a lot of cases. So anyway, we're going to talk a little bit about the methodology here. And we have a specific mass spec and tandem spec, which is very crucial for the specificity that you'll be getting with this result and sensitivity. So you want to have, a test you can rely on and trust. And essentially that's what this methodology is doing for you. So you're going to be able to find what's really going on with your patients down to the root cause, right? That's what we're all looking for. So this is the interpretive guide. So how to interpret the report. I went over this a little bit. Essentially, we're looking at percentages and quintiles. So it's going from 0 to 20%. That's first quintile, et cetera. And then you can have some double-tailed results, and then you have single-tailed results. So, you can have red and orange on each side. And then that means that this result, if it's low, you're going to do something different than if it's high, right? So there could be a need for more of the substrate. Maybe they're not getting enough fatty acids or eating enough food or fasting too much. So there's things like that, because intermittent fasting has been, kind of a in vogue thing off and on, at least for the last 8 years plus, maybe longer, depending on who you follow and, what influencers are influencing your patients, right? So things to think about. And then the borderline levels we're really highlighting in the updated test. So that's kind of one of the take-home points of this slide is 80th percentile and higher. You're really going to get a lot of input there. So a lot more finesse to tuning the dials, tuning the kind of the race car, sports car, if you kind of use that analogy. And specifically, we're going to go into kind of like the 5 key sections real quick, and then hopefully get into the case study. So if you have questions, we will review those at the end. And this is the interpretive guide. This is the front page of it. So when you go to the website and download it, you'll be able to see this. You can print it out, or you can just keep it on your desktop. And that's what I do. And then I will just search different analytes and read about it. It has nice visuals. Show you a couple of those in a second. So there's 5 core sections to the organic acid profile urine test here at the lab. And energy and mitochondrial processing is one. A nutritional section. We create a nutritional dashboard in the test for you, combining different analytes. And then there's stress and mood, toxic impacts, and microbial metabolites. We really don't have time to talk about every different analyte. I would definitely recommend signing up for DSL Academy and more educational stuff here at Rupa Health about the organic acid profile and organic acid testing, and whenever that comes up in the future. And essentially, you'll be able to dive into more detail around all the different sections of the test. But for the sake of today, this is how the interpretive guide looks. So you'll be able to understand in glycolysis and the Krebs cycle what different micronutrients are needed and why. So, it's important that when your patient is doing the test, they're doing the test as they are, not making any major changes that they wouldn't already be doing on a regular basis. So you're kind of testing them how you want to see them to intervene in their health, right? So if they're not working out a lot and they start working out, maybe that would be a different result for you. Or, if they came back from a trip and they were traveling around for a month, you may want them to get back into a flow. A lot of people ask, do they need to take supplements? Should they keep taking their supplements before? It really depends if you want to get a metabolic baseline or if you want to wait and, check in on what they're already doing, because you could already have them on supplements and nutrients, and maybe you want to see if you're missing something in their plan. So then you could keep them on all those supplements, and that would essentially help you get down into the weeds there even more. So nutritional assessment is going to give you a lot of information around not just B vitamins and ALA and stuff like that in the Krebs cycle and CoQ10, but minerals, magnesium, manganese. You're going to also be able to look at things like amino acids beyond carnitine, glycine, and acetylcysteine, and also different plant compounds. And you'll hopefully be insightful for you. So there's a lot of different key brain micronutrient cofactors. I have a lot of slides on this. I think I'm going to honestly skip through some of these so we can get to the case study. But we really don't know as much about the brain as we probably think we do. Obviously, in medical science, we're learning more and more in neuroscience all the time. It is a pretty, it's kind of like outer space. It's an endless topic of development. So you may find research in the next 3 months that could change your patient's outcomes and things like that. So, using things like nutrients, compounded nasal sprays, all kinds of things today, methylene blue, different IV therapies can be really helpful, laser therapies. And maybe you're already doing those things in your practice, red light therapy. All these things together can really improve brain health. So with this test, you're adding another tool to kind of assess how those things are impacting. And maybe somebody doesn't have enough B6 specifically or vitamin C. So you're able to get them the P5P version and, carefully don't dose too high with B6, but you can get a higher dose for a while, a safe dose. And then you may actually find things in the test around iron deficiency. It's very common, iron deficiency anemia or other iron deficiencies for other reasons. And that may lead you to ordering a CBC and ferritin and iron panel that wasn't ordered. So this test could really capture a lot of things that are affecting brain health, mood, and energy. And now we're going to get into the case study. Hopefully this is the fun part for everybody. And so this is kind of an amalgam of real people. So their names are changed for their privacy, of course. So we'll talk about fatty acid oxidation here, dopamine and catecholamine pathway, and focus and intention, of course. So this guy's fake name is Drax. So if you saw the movies Guardians of the Galaxy, that's the character Drax down here. And then he's an older guy, well, oldish, I guess, depending on what you consider old. He's not a young guy anymore, 47, and he can't sleep at night. So he's up all night playing video games in his man cave and playing on his cowbell, and his wife's going nuts and she's considering divorcing him. And all jokes aside, that is actually a pretty high stats of divorce with untreated or unmanaged, rather, for lack of a better word, ADD for couples. So that's a real stat and pretty high stakes here, right? So he scored 100% on the adult ADHD self-report scale. This is the World Health Organization's questionnaire you can do online. You can have your patients do online. You can put in your intake forms. So you can go ahead and find that through a quick search. And he was diagnosed with inattentive ADD. So statistically, if you look at inattentive type ADD, is actually more common in women and typically diagnosed later in life. Adult women have kind of been neglected in that diagnostics statistically and demographically in their youth, because we've kind of pigeonholed this phenotype or this presentation of ADHD as the typically boy who won't stay still and is a problem in class and, bouncing off the walls, behaviorally acting out, or maybe the class clown, maybe an athlete, but if they're not physically active, everything gets worse, et cetera, right? But there's different kind of phenotypes of these things, and we're, as I mentioned, still learning about the brain a lot and probably will be forever. So his ADD is negatively impacting his marriage and his work because he's, acting out and things are not going well. So he doesn't want to take ADD meds because he's trying to get his pilot's license. And this is a real thing. So here in the US, in case you're in Canada, FAA rules as of August 30th, 2023 require 4 years of being medication free and symptom free to qualify to your pilot's license. So it's a long time. 4 years is a long time, or more than 4 years for somebody to get there. So inattentive ADHD symptoms, or ADD symptoms rather, are careless mistakes, difficulty sustaining attention, easily distracted, incomplete tasks, disorganization, forgetfulness, small stimuli like noises in an office or an open floor plan. A lot of companies in Seattle where my patients would work, they would have an open floor plan, open office, and people would need noise canceling headphones to work there. And it's very hard for them to work there. So when, a lot of people went to work from home in 2020, they actually noticed if they had a home office and the kids in the house wasn't too noisy, they could actually get stuff done. So losing important items, misplacing things, car keys, wallets, things like that all the time. And maybe that's something else. So there's, I want to make sure you go through your differential diagnosis if you're a diagnostician, or actually your license or your training requires that. So there's other things this could be, and this is kind of a joke, but we have Venn diagrams, right? So the almighty Venn diagram of cognitive situations for patients or presentations. There's so many different things here, right? Anxiety, depression, bipolar, substance abuse disorders, or kind of a comorbidity with ADHD sometimes. Other learning disabilities, thyroid disorders, typically hyperthyroidism, aka Graves' disease typically, and considerations post-concussive syndrome. So as your patient had a concussion, did the ADHD or ADD start after the concussion or get worse? Probably. Or is your patient actually, having untreated post-concussive syndrome and never had ADHD symptoms or ADD symptoms? If multiple or one or more family members have similar symptoms or have been diagnosed, that's also a telltale sign. And Dr. Amen talks about that quite a bit, actually. So co-occurring, anxiety, depression, other disorders. So maybe they have insomnia too. So we'll talk about that because that's what's happening here with Drax, staying up all night, not sleeping, insomniac. And then there's specific markers that you want to highlight for your ADHD and ADD patients in the urine organic acid test, such as lactate. They could have fatigue and brain fog if that's out of balance, and mitochondrial dysfunction. And pretty much if, you're diving into metabolic health and mitochondrial health, you are pretty aware probably of mitochondrial dysfunction being an issue. So this test, if that's your thing, if that's what you're, drilling down into your continuing ed or other trainings and certifications after your initial training, that would be, crucial to have this test on board, in my opinion. So fatty acid metabolites, imbalances in fatty acid oxidation can lead to low energy. Phenylalanine and tryptophan metabolism. So that's dopamine and serotonin pathway, and dysregulation there can really, mess up people's mood and sleep and all kinds of things. Benzoic acid and arabinol, so markers of the gut dysbiosis. Benzoic acid is also a preservative. So just keep in mind that people are doing all kinds of things we may not be aware of. They may be eating things that have preservatives in them. They're not reading labels. They may be getting injections of something with a preservative. So it's not always typically, you want to rule out those non-pathological causes, especially with a functional test like this. So this is not like a diagnostic test. We're not testing for scary diseases or anything here. And so if your patient is very anxious and hyperdiligent about test results, like a lot of my patients are and have been, and I can be that way sometimes too, it's important to kind of reframe the result that this is a functional test and you're tuning up their health. So specifically, you could really, as mentioned, dive down into these things. And then succinic acid and alpha ketoglutarate have quite a bit of research on them. So we'll talk about those a little bit, but those are some massive Krebs cycle markers that have a lot of cofactors and things that play into energy and cognitive health and heart health, everything. So this is a bigger picture of the Krebs cycle, glycolysis, all the way through, and the cofactors. So this is your interpretive guide. and you're going to be able to see what's needed. So, for example, with alpha ketoglutarate or alpha ketogluteric acid, you have all these different cofactors, many B vitamins, ALA, potentially magnesium coming through here, and you can see the different amino acids that are input into this. So when you pair this with a GI map, you'll be able to see if the elastase 1 is deficient, and then are they breaking down amino acids in their upper GI and their stomach and small intestine so they can in absorbing them. So if they're not, then they're going to have issues in the Krebs cycle from that alone, but they also may not be absorbing these B vitamins and minerals, or they may not be eating foods that are high enough in certain B vitamins or taking their supplements. So it's a good, I think Dr. House said that all patients lie. I don't necessarily believe that, but it's a good way to check on some things if they're being compliant as well. A lot of lab testing is, right? So here you can check on are they taking the supplements? Are they taking them frequently enough? People forget things, especially with people with age. And if you can help them tune up their nutrition and everything, you're going to be able to help them figure out what is actually needed, and then they can have motivation to complete your treatment plan. So they may be completely overwhelmed by our plans, since we're often very overly optimistic and are in this profession, hopefully, to help people get well. And essentially, we may have very high hopes for what people can do. However, if they have untreated ADD, they may not be able to get through your plan. So helping them with their dopamine pathway initially can actually help them tackle your treatment plan, and then they're going to be successful and get well and improve, hopefully. And then they're going to refer more people to you, and then just the cycle just keeps going, right? So succinic acid, I was talking about for Drax was high, and that could mean that he needs more antioxidants, magnesium, B6, iron, CoQ10, and succinic acid, specifically this dehydrogenase enzyme, succinic dehydrogenase. A cofactor is B2, but also succinic acid dehydrogenase itself has iron in the enzyme. So someone could be iron deficient and have an issue with this too, potentially. So just keep that in mind. But you could, start with things like, high dose magnesium that's readily absorbable, CoQ10, B6, especially if other markers indicate these things. So you want to look at the test completely, not just one marker at a time, and then put together the plan. That's why I do recommend ordering on yourself and then going and scheduling a consult with us so we can review it with you. It is very challenging. I don't know if you all are tracking your nutrition. I use Chronometer with a lot of patients, and I've used it myself off and on for years. And you can eat 2 cups of blueberries and drink 4 cups of green tea and eat very healthy and still be mildly deficient, moderately deficient in antioxidants. Plus, most of us live in a very oxidative environment, and our lives are oxidative. So, and aging's oxidative. So when we say antioxidants, people are like, yeah, just a cup of green tea. That's really not typically enough. So in that case, you probably want to supplement or figure out why someone like him needs so much antioxidants, because is it a toxin? What is the cause, right? And we do have that on the test as well, like the toxic impacts and things like that. So fatty acid oxidation, this is more biochem for everyone who likes biochem like me. So this image you're getting of the mitochondria. So there's outer and inner mitochondrial membranes. And here we have L-carnitine and the long chain fatty acid chains coming through. So the L-carnitine is kind of like a tugboat in a harbor, pulling in the ship, if you will, into the harbor and then into the inner mitochondria so that it can be used and then broken down into medium chain and short chain fatty acids. And that's what you're seeing here. So this is a medium chain fatty acid after it's been broken down. And then you have sebacic acid, sebacic acid, and adipic acid. So when those are out of line, then you know that there are specific cofactors. In that case, it may not be L-carnitine. It may be more vitamin B2, which is used for FAD. So that's very important for this part of the test. So this is his result. Fatty acid oxidation, we have sebacic acid, and palmolic acid. So these are all high normal. Obviously, 7.4 is high normal. So you're going to give vitamin B2 therapeutic dosages that are safe and effective for them. And this is the interpretive guide. So the other slide was the test. This is what the interpretive guide will tell you. Carnitine for people who have a lot of anxiety can be a little too much. As far as L-carnitine, oral dosing is typically 500 milligrams as a starting dose, up to 2,000, sometimes 2,700 milligrams a day is a typical dose, but of course, every patient's different. So start low and slow with dosing, especially if your patient is already having anxiety or panic attacks or something. And then you may want to dose that in the morning is how I would look at it. So this is going to be a morning test. And if it's low in the morning, then that's the time to give it, in my opinion. Catecholamine pathway, the dopamine story, focus in me. So this is kind of my favorite part. Dopamine has gotten a lot of press or limelight, and it's pretty impressive. There's a lot of correlation or connection with dopamine and testosterone. So we have homovalenic acid is a marker of dopamine turnover in your organic acid test, and then the VMA or vinylmandelic acid as well. And if you're testing these genetics for these enzymes, the SNPs, if you will, single nucleotide polymorphisms, you have MAO, CMT, and the cofactors for these. So both dopamine and noradrenaline, aka noradrenaline, is getting broken down by CMT and MAO. So if your patient has an MAO SNP, then they may need more support around that, and that could be impacting this organic acid. If you're not doing that testing, just look at the cofactors, see if they have a need for that, if they're not taking enough or they need more. But there's cofactors listed all the way through. So, magnesium, B2, vitamin C, and copper. And right here between dopamine and norepinephrine is DBH. So that's dopamine beta hydroxylase. We're going to talk about that next. And then you have copper and vitamin C as cofactors. So a lot of people are copper deficient today, and there's a reason for that, but many reasons. Talk about that in a minute. So the dopamine story, here's another pathway for you, another kind of framework of the same thing. And dopamine beta hydroxylase right here, dopamine to norepi. And then you have MAO, CMT, B2, B3, SAMe, iron, and magnesium. Don't just give everybody SAMe here. You could really send them into a pretty uncomfortable place if one of these SNPs is out of balance, or if they have a lot of histamine in their gut-brain axis. SAMe and methylation can be not fun. Methylated histamine is very manic feeling sensation in the brain. So tread lightly there. And then obviously the whole pathway starts up at phenylalanine and then comes to tyrosine. So looking at things like iron, MTHFR, SNP, and/or methylated folate, B3, vitamin C, vitamin D, et cetera. So a lot of people with ADD and ADHD have a tyrosine hydroxylase enzyme genetic mutation and/or along this pathway in other places. So that's why I was talking about those nutrigenomics. So you could pair this test with the nutrigenomics test if you're feeling advanced, if you're feeling like the beginning of today's webinar was boring or a review, then yeah, go to the next level. So this is like your organic chemistry, if you will, of these different structures, 3D and whatnot. And, you can practice drawing that out if you're feeling like it. So the dopamine story continued. This Dr. Robert Sapolsky is a PhD neuroscientist. He's been on a lot of podcasts, but in my endocrinology class in school, in naturopathic medical school, we had to read his book, Why Zebras Don't Get Ulcers. So I highly recommend it. He's written a lot of other books too. And he says dopamine is not about the pursuit of happiness, but the happiness of pursuit. So it's really about the hunt, the pursuit of the goal, the pursuit of the paycheck, the pursuit of a mate, the pursuit of money, fame, fortune, and people are going all the way like that, right? So our society is focused on a lot of external pursuits, but maybe your patient is trying to come to you, obviously, to get well. So if you improve their dopamine, as I already mentioned, just to reiterate, I think that's a really important key point that I've seen is where patients can't get through our complex treatment plans. So improving their brain health is going to help them do that. Maybe they have a hard time even using a patient portal and they're need the brain support, brain help. So catecholamine, obviously dopamine. Dopamine is also the motivation neurotransmitter and precursor to epinephrine, noradrenaline as mentioned, and then it comes from, the tyrosine further. So don't always want to just throw tyrosine at everybody. They could feel pretty horrible like that. So using this test to figure out what they actually need, in my opinion, is a good way to go. And dopamine is crucial for many other things. Movement receptor mediates dopamine role in reward motivated behavior. So it's been kind of considered in this different frameworks around things like addiction and, everything from gambling to gaming, things like that dopamine is at play there. And other specific pathologies, Parkinson's disease, schizophrenia, and beyond what we're talking about today, a bipolar disorder, et cetera. Could be dopamine pathways could be compromised in different areas and for different reasons beyond autoimmunity and stuff. So high dopamine levels, can be more kind of scary things, or loss of dopamine secreting neurons in the substantia nigra in the brain. That's Parkinson's, right? So then they're having a movement neurological condition or involuntary movements in rigidities. So bacterial origins, that could be Clostridial difficile and things like that. So, which you can see in the GI map with the organic acid profile. So you could see if it is gut related or not. And then when you get the test result, this is what it looks like. So for Drax, his dopamine beta hydroxylase enzymes were off and homovolinic acid was high. So maybe he needs more B2 and magnesium. And then his ratio is off. So his ratio is high of HVA to VMA. So he needs more of copper and vitamin C. So copper and zinc compete with each other. And a lot of people have taken a ton of zinc over the last 4-ish years, right? Because we have this whole virus thing going on. So your patients could be high dosing zinc right now. We're in the middle of November, and maybe they need to take copper in the morning with food, or they need to eat foods that are higher in copper, which is like beef liver, different things like pumpkin seeds are higher in copper, etc. And if they start feeling low motivation because of that, then you definitely want to look at not overdosing them on copper, because that can cause other problems. And the max dose, this is from the NIH fact sheets, Copper Health Professional Health Sheet. You can find this online easily. And this is the nutritional, max dose, upper limit. So you don't need to go this high, but you could start out at 2 milligrams or 2,000 micrograms for your adult patients. And it has the pediatric ranges too, if you work with peds, so the children. And HVA to VMA, vitamin C, and copper deficiency. So this is the interpretive guide. So now we're drilling down into, okay, they need, when do they need copper and vitamin C? If they have the antioxidant, the succinic acid level really high, they're going to definitely need a lot of more vitamin C, right? So they need that antioxidant and other antioxidants. If you are concerned about copper, you can also test it in other ways with this test, which we'll talk about at the end. So this is more of the interpretive guide. Consider the cofactors copper and vitamin C when HVA is high, and consider GI map to check dysbiosis to see if it's from microbial bioactivity there in the metabolites on this test. So probable impacts of the HVA-VMA ratios. Your patients probably are taking things that they even forget to tell you. It's good to have them send you a list if you're remote, or take photos and text them to you, or whatever, however you communicate privately with your patients through the right channels, or just if they're coming into your clinic, have them bring all those things in and write them down on your intake forms. So because specific things like quercetin, things like bananas, green tea, ginkgo, mucuna. There's products with that and tyrosine in it, and they may already be taking it. And patients don't know what they don't know, right? So you could ask them, what are you taking? And they just say, oh, I just take like vitamin D and a multivitamin, and my protein powder and something else, right? So having them bring those things in is going to be really crucial. The tryptophan pathway is also really helpful. Drax insomnia is, driving the household nuts and affecting his work life and things like that. So tryptophan pathway looks like this in the interpretive guide. So you have tryptophan, serotonin turnover going all the way through and down to quinolinic acid. And then there's some pretty cool ratios that we put out in the tests, like the KT ratio or KTR. And if you put KTR into PubMed, you'll see it has to do with like inflammaging and all that kind of like stuff that is talked about a lot on podcasts today in metabolic syndrome and metabolic health. But for sake of today's topic, sticking to serotonin pathway, tryptophan being eventually converted out to serotonin, is you're going to get in the urine 5-HIAA. And if your patient's taking antidepressants, you want to know before this test, because it will change the results. 5-HTP will change the result, push it up higher. So you'll be able to see that here. This is what it looks like. So this person has severely deficient levels. So we're not going to give vitamin B3. We would give that if it was high. Instead, the interpretive guide is talking about 5-HTP and or probably B6, maybe if you have other markers showing a need for B6. You also, more conventional urine tests would do like a 24-hour of this, but you don't necessarily have to do that because this correlates with it. So now they don't have to check black to their urine for 24 hours, right? So low levels may indicate inadequate serotonin production. Very low levels may indicate decreased serotonin turnover and need for support. So this person, just to reiterate, had non-detectable levels, less than DL, of this marker. So we're going to give them 5-HTP and or other things to support that pathway. Not everybody does well with 5-HTP. So common coping mechanisms in our ADD patients, are they hurting or helping? So there's different stimulant medications that conventional medicine prescribes. I don't have a soapbox about that. And I think that's up to the individual patient, what they need, and maybe they need it for a short period of time. I have patients and family members that use it just during work days, and it's fine with them, and they can just take it when they really need to get stuff done. Vyvanse is insanely expensive here in the US now. We've had Adderall shortages. It was a big deal in the last couple of years. And Ritalin obviously does not work for everybody. So I've had patients have to go through several meds until they find one that works, or they couldn't find one that worked for their phenotype at all. Nicotine is a neurotropic, but it's also addictive, and chronic use can have problems. So be careful with that one. I'm not prescribing nicotine off of a webinar, so please don't misconstrue that. But I'm not a fan of people smoking. So obviously, but it does impact dopamine. So if you have a patient, the way I look at these things is if you have a patient who's smoking cigarettes or vaping, nicotine things and whatnot, which arguably vaping is worse for you in your lungs than because it gets deeper into the tissues than smoking, and also way more in vogue now. Obviously, vaping is even in seventh and eighth graders and middle schoolers, high school kids. If they're drinking a lot of diet soda, I had a patient who was drinking 6 diet sodas in the morning, and in the evening drinking about 12 shots of hard liquor every night in the hot tub. I don't know how they didn't pass out on there, but anyway, so that's obviously his brain craving these things, right? So there's no shame in that. What we want to do is try to help their brain. So their brain's telling us, hey, I'm craving this. What else can we give them and help them do in their diet and lifestyle, and maybe with supplements and with this test? Maybe we give him L-tyrosine in the morning or rhodiola, right? And in the evening, we can give him 5-HTP, B6, other things, calming things, maybe L-theanine during the day. Living in Montana and Seattle for a long time now, basically, all winter long, and, drinking a lot of coffee and tea to get through the dark, cloudy winters. And it's kind of just part of the culture. So I'm not against coffee. However, 50% of us are slow users. So know yourself and know your patient. And high caffeine does trigger the APA axis. So the neuroendocrine system is going to get stimulated. And if someone has some nervous system dysregulation, tons of coffee. I've had patients admittedly telling me they're drinking a pot and a half of coffee a day. So usually I add a little bit more because not everyone's honest, but that could be significant impact on their nervous system and their brain. So just keep those things in mind. And that is a telltale sign that, hey, probably should do these tests and maybe order other tests. Obviously, it's not going to order these for every patient, but this slide is some ideas for you to consider for your patients. For diagnostic workup, we have conventional blood tests. You can order a lot of these here through Rupa Health, through different labs you use. I've used Access Medical Labs probably for, 9 years, roughly 8 or 9 years. And it's great, direct lab pricing for patients getting these blood tests done. So here's start of a list. And then when you're looking at minerals, this copper zinc ratio is crucial. So you could do the organic acid test. And if you were concerned about overdosing someone on copper or zinc or something long-term, then maybe 2 months later, you check a red blood cell mineral panel, or you just do copper and zinc. You can do those through other labs too, LabCorp, Quest, Access Medical Labs. And then stool testing, GI map tests, urine mold testing. I've done a lot of these. And then there's IgG and IgE mold testing, et cetera. So one thing I do want to say real quick, though, is that a lot of people are not getting sleep studies. So if your patient has trouble breathing at night, if they're chronically tired and you're doing everything you can to help them and they're not getting better, please send them for a sleep study. I've had patients where I've just sent them off a discovery call for a sleep study and said, please don't come work with me until you've had it done. It is a severe issue with sleep apnea being so prevalent and undertreated, and people are not getting their CPAP machines tuned up and at the right pressures and things like that. Also, CPAPs you want to be careful of because they can be a source of mold if they're not cleaning them frequently. So there's all kinds of stuff like that. But there's other things like narcolepsy, restless leg syndromes while people are sleeping. So they may need a sleep study, but they need a 24-hour comprehensive sleep study, which includes this PLMD, and that will be very helpful for a lot of your patients. So please don't forget that. Please do refer. You can save someone's life. Their brain and their hormones and everything will completely change. So, and then do this test. So do the organic acid test with them and a patient action plan. So let's try to bring it all together. So what does Drax need to do as far as supplementation? So we found that he needs most likely, especially vitamin B2 and probably acetylcarnitine to get his brain tuned up, especially with his current schedule and more energy in the morning. And then potentially more antioxidants, right? Or definitely more antioxidants, but potentially CoQ10 and vitamin B2 as well for the Krebs cycle. And then we talked about dopamine beta hydroxylase enzyme supporting required cofactors, copper and vitamin C. You can do like liposomal vitamin C, to bowel tolerance. And then copper, ideally from food first. And we'll talk about that a little bit in the next slide. And then tryptophan pathway support with 5-HTP if he tolerates it. And there's products with that with B6 and stuff like that. So take that before bed. And now Drax is like doing his woodworking project. I think he's making like an outdoor gazebo or something like that. And so he can play music there. And he has an action plan. And so he's taking copper with breakfast, but he's also taking it through food, so to speak. So there's like bison and elk liver, beef, pistachios, and pumpkin seeds, and then all these different supplement inputs. And this, not forever, but maybe for 3 months or so, or 2 months, and then you retest. So there's a lot of different forms of magnesium. Magnesium L-threonate is supposedly better for the brain, and a lot of people are now debating if it truly like gets through the blood-brain barrier or not. I mean, frankly, most of your patients don't even really have an intact blood-brain barrier to the level we thought they did, especially if they have gut problems. Magnesium bisglycinate chelate is one of my favorite forms of magnesium, but give them all the magnesiums you can in one supplement, all the different forms. And then we have CoQ10 and the B vitamins, B6, B2, and 5-HTP. So this research paper is talking about the 5-HTP dose. So you can pull that PMID off of that slide. And overall, I'd just like to bring it home here, a review of the AP and the value. For me, there's been times when I was doing simply this test with blood tests, and I do a lot of hormone testing and testing, not just adrenal and thyroid hormones, but testosterone and male and female hormones for my adult patients. And then adding this testing really took things to the next level. And that actually brought me deeper into environmental medicine personally. So it's broad. You can, whatever population you work with, I believe this test can help them. And you're going to be able to see what's going on at the mitochondrial level. So it's cost effective, and it's, compared to other organic acid tests out there, I believe it's more affordable, and it's really helpful for adults and children. You're going to be able to look at the gut-brain axis and neurotransmitters and what's going on with your patients at a deeper level. So, and, it's pretty easy to interpret once you get used to it and start studying it. So you can order it here, or you can go through Rupa Health and order it. Your references are at the end. So when you get the PDF of the slides, you can look up different things here. If you are into kind of video, there's the DSL Academy, and we're going to hopefully be doing more stuff here with Rupa Health. So I believe that's the plan. And you can read the different research papers. If you're like me, you like to skim through research and try to put it all together, this is the page for you. So this is where a lot of this information came from. I didn't just make it up or hear it on a podcast. So hopefully that's cool with you guys.
Welcome to Rupa Health, the best place to order, manage, and track results from over 30 different lab companies in one single place for free. It's going to take you under 2 minutes to sign up, and you can order any functional medicine lab for your client in under 30 seconds. Let me show you how it's done. So here's our beautiful interface. I'm typing in the name of my client, selecting the lab that I want to order for them, and hitting send. From there, Rupa and their amazing team handle the rest. They email the client, collect payment, and even offer an interest-free 3-month payment plan. We've also built the world's largest library of information about chronic health conditions, the lab tests that can help you find the root cause, and the evidence-based interventions that you can use to help people heal from them. It's called the Rupa Health Magazine. There, we have in-depth articles about almost any health condition you can imagine. And we give you step-by-step protocols that other clinicians have used to help their clients heal and that are verified by evidence-based sources. You should totally check it out, and it'll transform your practice. And we can't wait to see you. So make sure you sign up today at rupahealth.com.